In the 21st century, we should question the very concept of war. Let's look at history and learn from it. Adolf Hitler, the dictator of Nazi Germany, responsible for WW II and the Holocaust. Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, whose actions have led to regional conflicts and the invasion of Ukraine. Hitler's rise to power was marked by economic turmoil in Germany and the exploitation of people's frustrations. Putin's rise to power was facilitated by the instability in Russia following the collapse of the Soviet Union. Hitler initially focused on rearming Germany and violating the Treaty of Versailles, leading to global tension. Putin's actions began with restoring Russia's military power and reclaiming influence over former Soviet territories. Hitler used propaganda to rally Germans to support his policies, depicting enemies as threats to the nation. Putin uses state-controlled media to manipulate public opinion and portray Western nations as enemies of Russia. Hitler's speeches were loud, aggressive, and filled with emotion, inspiring intense loyalty from his followers. Putin's speeches are often calm and composed, yet they carry strong messages of nationalism and defiance. Hitler's strategy was based on blitzkrieg, using fast-moving warfare to quickly overwhelm enemies. Putin uses a combination of traditional military tactics, cyber warfare, and misinformation in his strategies. Hitler's foreign policy focused on territorial expansion and the creation of an empire in Europe. Putin's foreign policy aims to restore Russian influence over former Soviet states and challenge NATO expansion. The invasion of Poland in 1939 marked the beginning of World War II and the start of global conflict. In 2014, Putin's forces annexed Crimea, marking the beginning of Russia's aggressive actions in Ukraine. Hitler's ambitions included conquering Eastern Europe, particularly Russia, and creating a German-dominated continent. Putin aims to rebuild Russia's sphere of influence, with territorial goals extending into Ukraine and other neighboring countries. Hitler manipulated fear, portraying Jews and communists as existential threats to the German people. Putin uses fear of NATO and Western interference to justify military actions and the repression of political opposition. Hitler's actions led to the genocide of 6 million Jews, along with countless other war crimes during WW II. Putin's invasion of Ukraine has been accused of numerous war crimes, including targeting civilians and infrastructure. Hitler's military expansion caused destruction across Europe, from Poland to France and the Soviet Union. Putin's military expansion involves using both conventional forces and proxies to destabilize neighboring countries. Hitler's propaganda was central to his success, using films, posters, and rallies to create a cult of personality. Putin uses state-controlled media and online platforms to spread a positive image of his rule and demonize the West. Hitler used the Gestapo and the SS to eliminate political opposition and suppress dissent. Putin maintains control through political repression, the imprisonment of opposition leaders, and stifling free speech. Hitler's downfall came when Germany was defeated in 1945, leading to the collapse of the Nazi regime. Putin's future remains uncertain, as ongoing international sanctions and domestic unrest may eventually lead to his downfall. Hitler heavily militarized Germany, preparing for war and eventually leading Europe into one of the deadliest conflicts in history. Putin has significantly modernized Russia's military, positioning it as a major global power despite economic challenges. Hitler formed alliances with Italy and Japan, creating the Axis power. Putin has fostered alliances with countries like China and Belarus. Hitler's war economy mobilized the entire German population, focusing on the production of weapons and military supplies. Putin has reshaped Russia's economy to be more focused on military production, especially in the context of ongoing conflict. Hitler's legacy is one of destruction, hatred, and the loss of millions of lives. Putin's legacy is still unfolding, with many viewing him as a symbol of Russian defiance and a promoter of war. The lessons of history remind us that war only leads to suffering and the destruction of innocent lives. In the 21st century, we must strive for peace and diplomacy, learning from the past to avoid repeating its mistakes. We must reflect on the actions of figures like Hitler and Putin and ask ourselves, is war ever the answer? In today's world, war is no longer justifiable. The consequences are far-reaching and devastating. Diplomacy and dialogue should always come before the use of force. The cost of war is always higher than peace. Putin has repeatedly disregarded international law, with actions like annexing Crimea and invading Ukraine. Hitler's disregard for international treaties, such as the Treaty of Versailles, set the stage for World War II. In the modern world, the threat of nuclear war is a real danger, with both Russia and the West possessing vast arsenals. Putin's ongoing military buildup, especially in Eastern Europe, has escalated tensions and provoked international concern. Hitler's military buildup in the 1930s and his invasions of neighboring countries contributed to the start of World War II. Both Hitler and Putin have been accused of war crimes, including the targeting of civilians and atrocities during wartime. The international response to Putin's aggression has been sanctions, condemnation, and support for Ukraine, but it has not deterred him. The international community's response to Hitler's aggression included forming alliances and declaring war on Germany. Putin's leadership style is characterized by autocracy, suppression of opposition, and a centralized power structure. Hitler established a totalitarian regime where dissent was punished and state control permeated all aspects of life. Hitler created a cult of personality, with his image as the savior of Germany promoted through. Putin has cultivated a similar cult of personality in Russia, often portrayed as the protector. Hitler's ideology was based on racial superiority, nationalism, and the expansion of the German Empire. Putin's ideology centers around Russian nationalism, the restoration of power, and resistance to Western influence. The military was central to Hitler's plans, with the Wehrmacht playing a key role in both his rise to power and the conduct of the war. The military is equally central to Putin's policies, with Russian military forces being used for domestic control and international expansion. Hitler's diplomacy was characterized by manipulation. Putin has similarly used diplomacy to further his goals. Hitler's alliances with Italy and Japan created the Axis powers, which Putin has cultivated alliances with countries like Belarus, Syria, and Iran, positioning Russia as a counterbalance to Western powers. Both Hitler and Putin have used ideology as a justification for war, claiming it as a means of protecting their nations. One of the darkest chapters in Hitler's reign was the systematic extermination of the Jewish population in the Holocaust. Putin's treatment of dissent is characterized by political persecution, imprisonment of opposition figures, and restrictions on free speech. Hitler's legacy is a world scarred by violence, genocide, and the loss of millions of lives in WW2. Putin's legacy will likely be marked by ongoing conflicts in Ukraine, Syria, and other parts of the world, with millions affected. The lessons of history urge us to recognize the dangers of unchecked power, the importance of diplomacy, and the need for peace. The 21st century must be a time for global cooperation, not war. Let's strive for a world where diplomacy and understanding prevail. Do not forget to subscribe our channel. We'll always come with interesting stuff.